So first, I just want to take a minute to tell you how you can get involved in the great cause of liberty. The Liberal Democrats have 22 candidates standing for office at the upcoming federal election, 10 in the House of Reps, including 5 in Queensland, 4 in New South Wales and 1 in the ACT. And we have 12 running for Senate, 2 in each of the 6 states. Now, apart from showing your support by voting for these candidates, you can help out with campaigning on the ground. All you need to do is go to the Liberal Democrats homepage, click on Join and then Volunteer, put in a few details and the LDP will be in contact. If you're in Queensland, click on this link and fill out a few details and an LDP member will be in touch. Now, I'd never done any campaigning until last year. You might think trying to put a how to vote card in someone's hand outside a polling station is boring and unrewarding, but you'd be surprised by the number of people that want to engage and have discussions about issues. And of course, there's the added bonus of slinging shit at the other party campaigners. Triggering Labor and the Greens is always fun. Links in the comments. Now, Bill Shorten is having trouble telling the Australian public how much his radical climate change policies are going to cost. Bill's approach seems to be, let's not get bogged down in unimportant details like cost until after the election. So instead, Big Mac Bill has decided to employ some awkward analogies to avoid talking about costs.
You are, present tense, a great athlete. But if you had a friend who was perhaps on the large side, the chubby side, and they had 10 Big Macs a day, yes, there's a cost to not eating the Big Macs. But in the long term, it's an investment, isn't it? You can't, the idea that you can get positive change for putting nil effort in, and I'm going to use this example of the exercise. Sure, there's a cost to exercising, but there's a benefit. Now, which do you measure?
Now, I couldn't find his last sentence on video, but the full quote was, now, which do you measure, the cost or the benefit? Or do you accept that it's all part of a total package? Well, I'm glad you're taking a cost-benefit approach, Bill, but I'd like to hear that in terms of dollars and cents, not Big Macs. So what are the costs and benefits of meeting Bill the Hamburglar's ambitious renewables and emissions targets? Well, the full scope of that discussion is beyond the limitations of this video, but if Australia were to move to zero emissions tomorrow, the benefit to the global climate is absolutely nothing, according to Australia's chief scientist.
If we reduce the world's carbon emissions by 1.3%, what impact would that have on the changing climate of the world?
Virtually nothing.
Other benefits include lower energy costs. That is, if you ignore empirical evidence. I see this claim of cheaper renewables trotted out all the time. I mean, it makes sense, right? The sun and the wind are free. After all, you don't have to dig them out of the ground. But you may have noticed this little phenomenon called intermittency, or in other words, those periods when the sun doesn't shine and the wind doesn't blow. Now, back in March, I attended Liberty Fest in the West and had the good fortune to meet and listen to Jo Nova, and she gave a presentation titled How to Destroy an Electricity Grid in 3 Easy Steps. Jo is the author of The Skeptic's Handbook, of which she's distributed over 200,000 copies, and it's been translated into 15 languages. Her blog attracts over 5,000 visitors a day, and she's won numerous Blog of the Year awards. I'll include a link in the comments below. Jo appeared on the Bolt Report earlier this week to explain why renewables aren't cheaper.
Well, the whole thing is, I guess, that it's going to pop because the prices fall so low that coal-fired power stations, they can keep pumping it out because they are so cheap, which I thought was amazing for the ABC to concede. They are still the cheapest form of power. They concede that in this article.
I thought that was the funniest admission of the ABC. They have so lost connection with reality that they actually phrase it as a problem. The real problem for renewables is that coal is cheap. It's like, hello, this is not a problem for the country, but it's a problem for the renewables industry. So what have we got? The ABC acting as a mouthpiece for the renewables industry. We pay $1 billion. It's supposed to represent us. It's supposed to be asking the hard questions and interviewing the electrical engineers who've been saying for a decade or more that we can't afford this transition, that this artificial transition, remember, it's wholly imposed by government, and it's bipartisan imposed at the moment by government, that we can't afford this because there are no cheap intermittent renewables. The nature of intermittency is expensive. So I don't know if you want to talk more about that and why renewables are so doomed to cost us more.
Yeah, well, for people that don't know, when you say intermittent, you're talking about the fact that when the wind doesn't blow, the wind generators obviously don't pump out power. When the sun doesn't shine, obviously the same problem with solar power. And that means you always need to have backup. So you can build them all you like, but the more you build, the more backup you need that is just sitting there. You've paid for it. It costs more, but it's just sitting there waiting to take over from the rest. How is this boom going to bust when that happens?
Look, it's the big deception of renewables. They save money on fuel. Sure, the sun is free and wind is free, and they keep telling us how free they are and how much there is in Australia. What they don't mention, though, is it takes a lot more than that to keep a generator producing electricity. So we've got these enormous coal plants paid off over 2 generations. You know, it takes, 30 years to pay down these big plants. And the cheapest electricity in the world comes from a 30-year-old brown coal plant at $30 a megawatt hour, and it can keep going for decades beyond that, and that's when we get the real bonus from the past generations who paid it off. Now, the insane thing about putting up a lot of wind and solar is that it at any time can only be guaranteed to produce 2 or 3%. Most of the time it's making a lot more than that, but about twice a month we get with wind, it's back down under 10% or less. As long as you want electricity, you've got to have those backup stations. Now, they may be not using coal while those wind turbines and solar things are running, but they're still paying all their on-costs, their staff costs, their maintenance costs, their insurance costs, the land costs, the capital cost. It's, you know, you can list them all. Those things don't go away. So even though you can run solar in the middle of the day, what we get with coal plants is they start charging more. They have to charge more to recover all of those other costs. I mean, their staff are sitting around just twiddling their thumbs watching cat videos on YouTube or something, but you've still got to pay them. So having coal stations sitting around doing nothing during the middle of the day while solar works, we're not saving money. That's the crazy thing about it. People think it's cheap, but just saving fuel is a small part of the total cost of running a big grid.
So next time someone tells you how cheap renewables are, ask them have they factored in the cost of intermittency. And isn't it a sign of desperation that the climate alarmists are now using children to push their message? People you wouldn't let run your household budget, let alone dictate climate policy? Oh, and let's not forget doxing economic modelers that don't produce the right answers that the climate crowd wants. The cost of Bill Shorten's climate policies will be disastrous, but you won't find out the true extent until he gets elected. So perhaps that's a risk not worth taking. As usual, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you next time.